they barely noticed her when she stepped onto the plane. She moved with quiet confidence, dressed simply, eyes alert, taking in every detail without drawing attention. As passengers settled into their seats, laughter and casual conversation filled the cabin. The pilots' voices came over the intercom, smooth and practiced, reassuring everyone that it would be a routine flight. He listened closely, not impressed, not doubtful, just aware. When she tried to ask a small, technical question during boarding, it was brushed off with a polite smile and a quick redirect. Nothing rude, nothing obvious, just dismissal wrapped in courtesy. She took her seat and looked out the window as the engines came alive. Around her, people scrolled on phones, adjusted pillows, complained about legroom. No one noticed the way her posture changed as the plane lifted off, how her focus sharpened with the climb. Pilots spoke again, confident, joking lightly. She noticed the gaps in their explanations, the assumptions they made. When a faint vibration ran through the cabin, most passengers felt only mild discomfort. She felt something else, recognition. Minutes later, the plane jolted. Seatbelt signs flashed. A low murmur spread as turbulence intensified. A flight attendant moved down the aisle, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Overhead bins rattled. Pilots' voices returned, slightly tighter now, promising everything was under control. The woman closed her eyes for a moment, listening, not to the noise, but to the rhythm of the aircraft. Something was off, not catastrophic yet. Sitting there, she leaned forward and spoke calmly to the attendant as she passed again, pointing out what she was feeling, what it might indicate. The attendant nodded, thanked her, and kept moving. The message never reached the cockpit. Up front, procedures were being repeated, checklists, followed by instinct rather than insight. The plane shuddered harder. Fear crept in, quiet at first, then louder. Whispers turned into prayers. Hands gripped armrests. Still, no one looked her way. She sat steady, heart racing but mind clear, knowing that if things continued this way, routine wouldn't be enough. The worst moment hadn't arrived yet, but it was close. When it did, the world would finally hear the voice they chose to ignore. The turbulence grew stronger, no longer the kind passengers could laugh off. The cabin lights flickered again, and this time the intercom crackled before the pilot spoke. His voice was still controlled, but the ease was gone. Around the cabin, people exchanged worried looks. A child began to cry. Someone whispered a prayer. A woman remained seated, hands resting calmly in her lap, eyes fixed forward. She had seen this pattern before, not this exact situation, but the signs that told her when confidence was beginning to outpace control. Another jolt shook the plane, sharper than the last. Flight attendants moved faster now, their practiced smiles replaced by focus. One stumbled slightly, catching herself on a seatback. The woman stood, not abruptly, not dramatically, just enough to be noticed. Few passengers looked up, surprised by her calm. She spoke clearly, asking to speak with the cockpit, explaining that what they were experiencing wasn't random. Her tone wasn't panicked or demanding. It was steady, professional. At first, there was hesitation. Rules were rules. Procedures were procedures. But then the plane dipped again, and the hesitation cracked. Flight attendant nodded and gestured for her to follow. As she moved forward, the cabin watched in silence. Fear has a way of sharpening attention, and every eye followed her now. The same woman who had been invisible minutes earlier was suddenly carrying the weight of hope. Inside the cockpit, tension filled the air. Voices overlapped. Systems blinked. When she spoke, the noise seemed to pause around her words. She didn't boast. She didn't criticize. Explained what she was noticing and why it mattered, connecting dots others were too overwhelmed to see. Pilots listened, first cautiously, then intently. One of them looked at her, really looked at her, and realized how wrong they had been to dismiss her earlier. Outside, the cabin felt the change before they understood it. The plane steadied, just slightly, enough to quiet the screams and gasps. The woman returned to her seat, not seeking attention, not waiting for thanks. She had done what needed to be done. The worst moment wasn't over yet, but for the first time since takeoff, fear no longer felt in control. Final moments felt longer than they were. The plane moved through the air with caution now, every sound amplified by the silence of people holding their breath. The woman sat upright, eyes forward, listening to the subtle changes she knew mattered. In the cockpit, the pilots followed a revised approach, calmer, more deliberate. No one rushed, no one argued. Chaos from earlier had been replaced with focus, the kind that only comes when ego steps aside. The intercom came on again. This time, the voice was different, steady, honest. Passengers were told what was happening in simple words, without false comfort. That honesty alone eased the cabin. Hands loosened their grip. Shoulders dropped. The plane adjusted, slowly, carefully, responding to decisions made with clarity instead of fear. The woman felt the shift and allowed herself one quiet breath. Not relief, yet, but recognition that they were moving in the right direction. As the aircraft descended, the city lights appeared beneath the clouds. A soft murmur rippled through the cabin, the sound of hope returning. When the wheels finally touched the ground, there was no cheering at first, just silence. Applause broke out, uneven and emotional, spreading from row to row. People wiped their eyes. Others laughed in disbelief. The woman remained seated, hands folded, her expression calm. She didn't look for the attention. He had never needed it. After the plane came to a stop, one of the pilots stepped into the cab. He didn't make a speech. He simply looked at her and nodded, gratitude clear in his eyes. The passengers noticed. Whispers followed. Stayed down. This wasn't a moment for spectacle. It was a moment for understanding. As people disembarked, many paused to thank her, some with words, others with quiet looks that said enough. Accepted each with humility, reminding them that listening, truly listening, had made the difference. Outside, the night air felt cool and grounding. Flight would be remembered by headlines and retold by strangers, but the real change happened earlier, in the moment voices were ignored and then finally heard. She walked away like anyone else, carrying no title, no applause. But everyone who had been on that plane carried something new with them, the knowledge that leadership can come from anywhere, and that the voice you overlook may be the one that saves you when it matters most.